Like Salmond's lawyers have said he could still appear before the inquiry into how the Scottish Government handled complaints against him. It comes after a High Court judge amended a court order which the committee says prevents it publishing evidence that Mr Salmond wants it to. Scottish Tory MSP Murdo Fraser is on the committee looking at how alleged incidents of harassment by the former First Minister were handled. And he's here with us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Laura.
So there's going to be a meeting at 2 o'clock this afternoon of the committee. What will you be asking for?
Well, I asked for this emergency meeting of the committee to be called, and I'm glad that the convener has agreed to that. And what I'm asking for is that we make arrangements for Mr Salmond to give us evidence. It's always been my view that he is a key witness to this inquiry, and the committee will not be able to conclude its work properly and draw up a report on what's happened without his evidence. To date, it's been very difficult to get that arranged, and I appreciate there have been legal issues with that. But two things have changed this week. The first thing that's changed is that there was a court hearing yesterday when the Spectator newspaper, a magazine, sought to get permission to publish some of Mr Salmond's evidence, and they were, we think, to a degree successful with that. And also we had remarks on Wednesday from the First Minister saying she wants to see Mr Salmond give evidence and he be compelled to do that if necessary. So I think that gives us the green light to go ahead and invite Mr Salmond to give evidence. And if we have to use compulsion powers, then we can certainly look at that. But I hope that will not be necessary, because the indications yesterday from his lawyers were that he would be prepared to come voluntarily.
Okay. So that's what you want to happen. What do you expect to happen?
Well, we were told yesterday afternoon by Mr Salmond's lawyers that he was now open to giving evidence. I hope we can follow through on that, and I hope that my fellow committee members will agree that he has to come. Now, we need to get to the truth of this whole affair. This farce has gone on far too long. The committee has had to put up with lies, with contradictions, with obstructions, with witnesses coming and giving us evidence that is incorrect, that they then had to correct in writing. We've had the women at the heart of this affair, vulnerable women who made complaints, being used as a political football by competing factions in an increasingly bloody civil war within the SNP. And I'm sick of this whole sordid affair. It's gone far too long. We need no more lies, no more obstruction, no more sophistry, and no more evasion from the key players here. We need to hear from the former First Minister and the current First Minister, and we need to try and get to the truth of what has gone wrong. What
will it mean for the First Minister's scheduled evidence if Mr Salmond does appear this coming week? Will it be put back, or will you go ahead as planned?
Well, I think that's something we need to discuss, because I think, as it currently stands, the First Minister is scheduled to give evidence on Tuesday. And in reality, if Mr Salmond was going to come in, I think the understanding always was that it would be reasonable that he would give evidence before the First Minister, and she would have the final word and be able to respond to anything he said. And I think realistically, the prospect of him being able to give evidence on Monday must be very remote. So I think probably we have to discuss the timetable and probably look at putting back the First Minister's evidence if she wants the opportunity to respond to what he says. Okay. Of course, we could First Minister on Tuesday and have Mr Salmond come after her, but I don't think that's probably fair to her, and I'm not sure that's something she would want.
Yeah, this committee was set up to investigate a failure of procedures, but is this committee in danger of failing?
The committee has been in danger of failing for a long time, for all the reasons I've set out, because of the woeful lack of cooperation from the Scottish Government, despite promises made by the First Minister that the government and indeed the Scottish National Party would cooperate with this committee.
But how has this been able to happen? Why is the committee not been able to respond and get what it was set up to do?
Well, the essential problem is that the committee, being a parliamentary inquiry, lacks the powers to compel information. So, for example, we now have had 2 votes in Parliament to require the Scottish Government to hand over the legal advice on which they decided to defend the judicial review taken by Mr Salmond, a judicial review which ended up costing the taxpayer £500,000 in legal costs to him and much more in legal costs to the Scottish Government. But the Scottish Government have refused to comply with those orders from Parliament. So, the committee has been unable to get vital information simply because we haven't had the powers to compel the government to provide that. Now, I'd hoped, given all the promises we had from the First Minister, that her government would cooperate with this inquiry, that we wouldn't need to go down that route. But it's simply the case that these have turned out to be lies.
Well, the First Minister has said yesterday in Parliament that she relishes the opportunity to be giving evidence, and she'll be doing that next week. We'll leave it there. Thank you for your time this morning. The Scottish Tory MSP Murdo Fraser there.